Have we reached peak guitar? Okay, here we go. I gotta go outside and do some chores here in this day, and then we will talk about some guitar related stuff. It's gorgeous out. Beautiful fall day out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Michigan. Seems you can't make a YouTube video nowadays without discussing whatever it is you're talking about while walking outside. So that's what I'm doing. Gotta stay up on the trends, you know, if you want to be taken seriously as a content creator. Let's see what these birds are up to. Chickens. What's up, birdie birds? There they are. Say hi, everybody. Say hi. This is your big moment. Your big TV moment. Your big YouTube moment. They're molting. They do that this time of year, which is like, doesn't make any sense because it's starting to get cold out. So what better time to let go of all your feathers than when it's 20 degrees at night? Makes perfect sense. If you've ever had chickens, you know roosters can sometimes be real pricks. This guy's actually pretty chill. So let's see if we can get a good view of him in there. Look at him. He's so pretty. Oh, camera shy. Oh, look out. All right, anyway, let's get on with it. So I wanted to talk about the concept of peak guitar. Guitars are sort of a unique product in that they haven't really changed in the past 70 years. And I'm talking about electric guitars. I mean, acoustic guitars haven't changed much either. But for instance, I always fall back to the Fender Stratocaster, probably because it's so recognizable, you know, kind of iconic. But this would apply to Gibson Les Paul and pretty much any guitar that's been made for, you know, decades. So, you know, you've seen the meme where it shows, you know, the progression of phones over the years and progression of different products, and then it shows, you know, the Fender Stratocaster in 1959 and then the Fender Stratocaster in 2024, and it's the same. It literally hasn't changed. So when you think of product innovation and product development and the life cycle of products are typically designed to, you know, phase out. It's planned obsolescence, I guess they call it. And so you kind of expect something, unless it's, say, like an old refrigerator, or, you know, there's some old air conditioning units that have been around, you know, since the 60s that still work. We had an old upright freezer. Actually, it's still in the basement right now, an upright freezer, and it works fine, and it's got to be from, you know, the early 70s. So certain products like that are kind of built to last. Maybe not so much anymore, I don't know. But, you know, typically speaking, a product will be revised and improved upon. But with guitars, there's not much to do with improving it or adding, you know, features and innovations. I mean, the 6-string Fender Stratocaster, you know, I mean, it works. You could take a Fender Stratocaster from, you know, 1962 and plug it into an amp made in 2023, and it still works. You know, likewise, you could take a guitar from 2024, plug it into an amp made in 1965, and it works. Everything is backwards compatible. It works. The technology hasn't changed. Whereas, like phones, I think are a good example. You know, I mean, are landlines even a thing anymore? It's like we don't have a landline in our house. We use our cell phones, and you know, the phone has gone through this massive change in the decades since it's been invented. So all this is leading to my point, which is, have we reached peak guitar? There's so many used guitars out there that theoretically the guitar companies could stop making brand new guitars tomorrow, and we'd probably have, enough guitars to satisfy consumer needs indefinitely. And another thing that I was thinking about is, what is the future of guitar? There's still older, even guys older than me that, remember sort of the old rock and roll, guitar-based rock and roll. And I think maybe they're the ones sort of driving guitar sales, and maybe people my age, I'm 53 years old, and so, I grew up in the 80s, and there was still quite a bit of guitar-based rock and roll, and then sort of got into the grunge era of the 90s, and then sort of the early aughts, I think, at least. This isn't, this is just based on my own observations. It's nothing scientific. In the early aughts, then that's when sort of rock and roll started to, fade. And the guitar, at least for me as a young kid in the 80s, that was the thing. You had to, learn how to play guitar. That made you cool, So a lot of guys and gals wanted to learn how to play guitar. So I know there are still some sort of popular guitar players out there, but you have to wonder what the future of it is, and then you have to wonder what, like guitar companies like Fender and Gibson, even Marshall's starting to shift their business model. They're making these little Bluetooth speakers and headphones and things like that. So I think they can kind of see the writing on the wall, because amplifier sales must be down because, you got all these pedals and amp sims and things like that. So playing through a giant stack of amps isn't really necessary anymore, and maybe not even practical. So it just begs the question, what is the future? So will Fender and Gibson be manufacturing guitars, forever? Will those companies still even be around in, 20 or 30 years? A lot of people didn't think businesses like Sears and Craftsman go out. They kind of went out, but I think they sold to somebody else. But you think of these big iconic brand names that everybody thought would be around forever, and they just went away. And so, it's hard to, at least for my generation, probably older generations, it's probably pretty hard to think that a brand like Fender or Gibson could just vanish, but it seems possible. So I just wonder will guitars become sort of like Super 8 movie cameras, where they still exist, you can still get film for them, you can still shoot with them, but it's sort of a niche, hobby sort of thing that people do that's not very widely done anymore, because everybody uses their cell phones to make videos, and you don't have the cost of buying film, and you only have 3 minutes to shoot on the film, and then you have to take it and get it processed, and then it takes a week to get back, and then you have to edit it, and there's really no sound to it. But there's a segment of people that still use Super 8 film to shoot movies with, as sort of an art type thing, and you just kind of wonder. The lifespan of the Super 8 movie camera was pretty short. The lifespan of the Fender Stratocaster has been considerably longer, so you'd have to assume that their longevity is going to continue quite a ways. But I just wonder if eventually guitars will sort of become a boutique item, or an antique item or something that people, like a curiosity, or even, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, that it not so widely used anymore, but they're still out there and people still maybe collect them or play them. And so that just leads me to the question, have we reached peak guitar? Is there a reason to even make guitars anymore? A lot of people bring up the sustainability issue because you're using wood, and the need for wood is sort of depleting natural resources and things like that. But since wood is a renewable resource, I think that argument kind of pales, because if it was managed properly, you could have enough resources to make guitars indefinitely. But as far as demand and things like that, it's just, I guess the reason I thought of this was because I go on Goodwill auctions a lot, and I had just done the review on that Squier Bullet, and I go on there and I see all these used guitars, and some of them, you can find a used guitar from the early 2000s, which is 20 years ago, and it's like it came out of the box. It's it's brand new. It's people buy the guitars, they'll use them for a few months or maybe a couple of years, and then the kid will go off to college, and then they won't play guitar again, and so it goes in the closet or whatever, and then it gets donated to Goodwill. So there's a huge inventory of used guitars out there, and they're all in really good condition. And now that you've got these small Chinese manufacturers making cheap guitars, guitar after guitar after guitar, it's like, it seems to me that things like that's not sustainable. Like, eventually the market's going to collapse and the demand won't be there, because there's so many guitars out there. If you want a really good guitar, you could find one used in excellent condition. I mean, you go on Reverb and there are guitars from 2012, American Fenders, that are basically brand new. The case is pristine. I mean, it's just sort of mind-boggling, the used inventory. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. If you think we have reached peak guitar, what is the future for electric guitars? What is the future for guitar manufacturers? Will the giant guitar manufacturers eventually either pivot and do something else, completely go out of business, and then guitars will just become sort of a boutique thing that only just a handful of small manufacturers produce? Or, maybe the small cheap guitar market will take over. If Fender wants to survive, maybe they'll have to continue to do these, they do a ton of signature stuff, and they do, like Gibson did that, that Jimmy Page double neck guitar, which is, God, I forget what it was. It was $30,000 or $10,000 or something like that. Just an insane amount of money. So a company like Gibson, that could represent, and then they made a limited amount of them, so that single guitar could represent a very large portion of their business. And I don't know what Fender's sales are, Gibson's sales are. They might be doing just fine. I don't know. So, but I just know that when I was younger, I would have loved to have been able to afford some of those guitars. And now, I could go out and buy a Gibson Les Paul for $3,000 or $4,000, but I would have sort of a bad feeling, because I would feel like, oh man, that's an awful lot of money to spend on, a guitar that, that I probably want, I mean, if I was a professional musician, it would be a different story. I would want the best guitar that I could get, and something that was iconic and recognizable so that I looked the part and everything like that. And if I played every day, then I could justify it. But, you know, if the guitar is going to be sitting on the wall for, you know, 95% of its life, then $3,000, $4,000 seems like an awful lot. But I don't have a problem spending money on these cheap guitars, because to me it's just a hobby, and I can buy those without the guilt, without feeling like I've, you know, needlessly spent a ton of money on something that is totally impractical. And then I like rescuing used guitars too, because, you know, it seems a shame that a guitar should just be out there sitting around not being used. So I like to do that and maybe refurbish things. So I'm just wondering what you think, what your thoughts are, if guitar is going to be around for a long time, if it's something that's going to kind of fade out, and if we've kind of reached the peak of guitar production, and if it's all downhill from here. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm going to get out of the freezing cold wind and get inside and make more content in my studio. So thanks for tuning in.